I had everything planned perfectly for my 65th birthday. Not a party, I'm not a party man. Never have been. What I wanted was simple, a quiet dinner at Ortega Fish Shack down on the waterfront in Nelson, the place my late wife Marjorie used to call our spot, the little restaurant with the salt air coming through the windows and the candles that always burned down faster than you expected. I'd booked a table for two, just me and my daughter Philippa. I'd even arranged for a small bouquet of yellow ranunculus to be waiting at the table when we arrived, Philippa's favorite flower, the one she used to pick from our garden as a little girl and press between the pages of her school books. I'm not a man who asks for much. After 38 years working as a civil engineer for the Nelson City Council, after raising two kids mostly on my own after Marjorie passed, after watching my son Callum move to Melbourne and build a life over there, after the long quiet of retirement, all I wanted for my 65th was one decent dinner with my daughter. I'd been looking forward to it for 3 weeks. Philippa rang me that afternoon. It was a Friday, about 4:30, while I was pressing my good shirt, the blue linen one Marjorie bought me for our anniversary trip to the Marlborough Sounds years ago. I still wear it for special occasions. I probably always will. Dad, she said, and there was already something in her voice. A lightness that didn't belong there. Happy birthday. Listen, I'm so sorry, but I completely forgot, Marcus's work thing is tonight. The big client dinner he's been going on about. He really needs me there. I stood with the iron in my hand. Tonight? I said. I know. I'm terrible. We can celebrate Sunday instead, yeah? I'll bring a pavlova. We'll make a proper afternoon of it. I looked at the shirt on the ironing board. I thought about the ranunculus already waiting at the restaurant. I thought about the table I'd booked 6 weeks ago because that particular spot by the window books out fast in summer. Of course, I said. Don't worry about it. You're the best, Dad. Sunday, I promise. Love you. She hung up. I set the iron down. Then I rang my neighbor Clive. Clive Abernethy is 71, a retired schoolteacher who lives in the old villa next door and who has been my closest mate for the better part of 15 years. We share a fence, a mutual appreciation for West Coast Pinot Noir, and a habit of watching the rugby together on Saturday afternoons. He lost his wife 2 years before I lost Marjorie, and we found each other in that particular way that widowed men find each other, quietly, without much ceremony, over cups of tea and long silences that don't feel awkward. What are you doing tonight? I asked. Watching a documentary about the Host Pass, he said. Why? Get dressed, I said. We're going to Ortega. There was a pause. Is it your birthday? It is. Give me 20 minutes. Clive and I had a magnificent dinner. We shared a bottle of Neudorf Mater Chardonnay, worked through the whole snapper on the grill with lemon and capers, and talked for nearly 3 hours about everything and nothing, his daughter's new house in Christchurch, a trout fishing trip we kept meaning to take up to the Wairau River, the summer Marjorie and I drove down to the Catlins with the kids in a borrowed campervan and the engine blew out near Waka. That kind of conversation that winds through decades without any particular destination and arrives somewhere warmer than where it started. The ranunculus were on the table, just as I'd arranged. Yellow, fresh, a little bundle in a glass jar. When the waiter asked if we were celebrating anything, Clive said, his birthday, before I could say anything at all. They brought out a complimentary slice of lemon tart with a single candle. It was a good night. A genuinely good night. On the drive home, Clive said, what are you going to do with the gift? I'd bought Philippa something for the dinner. Not for her birthday, just a gesture. She'd mentioned months ago, in passing, that she'd always wanted a proper pearl pendant, the real kind, not the costume jewelry sort. I'd found one at a little goldsmith on Bridge Street run by a Maori jeweler named Hemi who does extraordinary work. A single Marlborough pearl on a fine gold chain. Simple. Elegant. The kind of thing that lasts a lifetime. I paid $850 for it. I haven't decided, I said. I had decided. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. My daughter-in-law's sister is a woman named Ren. I should explain. Callum, my son in Melbourne, married a woman called Priya. Priya has a younger sister, Ren, who lives here in Nelson and who has, over the past several years, quietly become one of the most genuinely kind people in my life. She's in her mid-30s, a nurse at Nelson Hospital, and she visits me more often than most people would consider strictly necessary. She drops off vegetable soup in winter. She rings on Tuesday evenings for no particular reason. When Marjorie died, she was the one who sat with me in the kitchen for an entire afternoon and didn't say a single thing that wasn't true or useful. She has never met the pearl pendant. But she'd mentioned pearls once. She'd said, almost to herself, that Marlborough pearls were some of the most beautiful things made in this country, and she'd never been able to justify the expense. The morning after my birthday, a Saturday, I drove to her flat in Stoke with the small velvet box in my jacket pocket. She opened the door in her running clothes, slightly out of breath, clearly just back from a jog along the Mai Tai trail. "What are you doing here?" she said, but she was smiling. "I have something for you," I said. She looked at the box. "That's not for me." "It is now," I said. I won't go into all of what she said, because some things that happen between people deserve to stay between people. But she cried a little, which surprised us both, and then she made me a cup of tea and we sat on her back deck looking out at the hills behind Stoke, and she wore the pendant the whole time, touching it occasionally the way people touch things that feel real. "Your daughter's going to lose her mind," she said. "That's not why I did it," I said. "I know," she said. "That's why I accepted it." Before I left, Ren asked if she could take a photo, just her and the pendant, the hills in the background, the Saturday morning light. I said of course. She posted it to her social media later that afternoon with a simple caption about gratitude and about the people in your life who see you without being asked. She didn't name me. She didn't explain where the pendant came from. But she tagged the location as Nelson. And within a few hours, something unexpected happened. Philippa follows Ren on social media. They've always been friendly, the kind of low-stakes warmth that develops between a man's daughter and his daughter-in-law's sister when everyone lives in the same city and shows up at the same Christmas gatherings. By early Saturday evening, the post had collected over 300 likes. Ren has a modest following. She's not an influencer, nothing like that, just a nurse with an honest way of writing about her life. But people responded to the image the way people respond to genuine things. Several commented on the pearl itself, asking where it came from. One woman wrote that it reminded her of her grandmother's pearls, the ones lost in a house fire years ago. Another said simply, "Whatever you did to deserve that, keep doing it." Philippa saw it at some point that evening. I know because she rang me. Not to ask directly. She rang to chat, the way she does when she's circling something, talked about Marcus's work dinner, how it had gone well, how the clients were from Auckland and had wanted to try Hopgoods. I listened. I made the appropriate sounds. I didn't bring up Friday. I didn't bring up the ranunculus or the table by the window or the 38-year-old blue linen shirt. Then she said, "I saw Ren's post." "Oh?" I said. "That pendant. It's beautiful." "It is," I said. A pause. "Where did she get it?" "From Hemi's place on Bridge Street," I said. "He does lovely work." Another pause. Longer this time. "Right," she said. "Okay. Well. Good night, Dad." "Good night, love." She hung up. I sat in my armchair in the front room, in the house that's been quiet for 7 years since Marjorie, and I listened to the evening, the birds settling, the neighbor's dog doing its last patrol of the fence line, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Not satisfaction. Or not only that. Clarity. Sunday arrived. No pavlova. No phone call until just after noon. When Philippa did ring, her voice had a different texture. Tighter. She mentioned she wasn't feeling well. Possibly a headache. She hoped we could reschedule for the following weekend. Of course, I said. I ate lunch alone. A cheese sandwich and the last of the tomatoes from the garden, which I'd been growing along the back fence in the pots Marjorie bought at a market in Motueka years ago. I made a cup of tea and sat outside in the sun and read my book, A History of the Southern Alps that Callum had sent from Melbourne for my birthday, that had arrived in the post 2 days earlier with a handwritten note that said, 65 years of being the best old man I know. Love, Callum. I kept the note on the kitchen bench. Monday morning, I was at Pack and Save buying the week's groceries when my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't immediately recognize. It took me a moment to place it as Marcus, Philippa's husband. Hey Neville, sorry to message out of the blue. Just wanted to check in. Phil's been a bit off this weekend. Hope you're well. Happy birthday for Friday. Marcus is a decent man. A project manager at a construction firm in Richmond. He plays social cricket on weekends, coaches his son's under-10s football, and has always treated me with genuine respect, the kind that isn't performed for an audience. He didn't know about Friday's cancelled dinner until I suspect Philippa told him at some point over the weekend. I messaged back, thanks Marcus. All well here. Hope Phil feels better soon. I thought about leaving it there. Then I added, Clive and I had a good birthday dinner on Friday. Ortega. Lovely evening. I pressed send and went back to comparing the price of butter. I found out later, from Ren, who found out from Priya, who found out from Callum, who had apparently received a very long phone call from Philippa on Sunday evening, that Marcus had read my message and had then asked Philippa, very quietly, whether she'd known I'd gone to dinner alone on my birthday. The conversation that followed, I'm told, was not a brief one. I need to step back here. Because this story isn't really about a pearl pendant or a cancelled dinner or a post on social media. If I'm being honest with myself, and at 65, with more years behind me than ahead of me, I've decided there's very little point in being anything else. This story is about something that had been building for a long time. Philippa is my daughter and I love her without condition, the way you love someone you watched arrive in the world, someone whose first word was bird, someone whose school reports you still have in a shoebox under the bed in the spare room. That love is not in question. But she has, over the past several years, developed a habit of treating me the way people treat things that sure won't go anywhere. Reliable infrastructure. The kind of thing that holds up the structure without requiring maintenance or recognition. She canceled our Christmas Eve dinner last year because Marcus's family wanted to do something at their place. I said that's fine, I understand, and spent Christmas Eve at Clive's. She forgot to ring on the anniversary of Marjorie's death, which is the 20th of March, a date that has always mattered and which she knows matters. When I mentioned it, gently, a few days later, she said she'd been flat out and that I knew she thought about Mum all the time. I do know that. I'm not doubting her love or her grief. But there's a difference between carrying someone in your heart and letting them know that you do. There's a difference between meaning to show up and actually showing up. I had never said any of this out loud, because I am a man of a particular generation, raised in Westport by a father who believed that expressing need was a form of weakness, and some lessons dig in deeper than you intend to let them. So I had absorbed it all quietly, the way you absorb things you've decided not to address, and it had accumulated somewhere in my chest like silt in a river. The pendant was never meant to be revenge. I want to be clear about that, because I've heard the word used in contexts like this, and I don't think it fits. What I did was simply choose, for the first time in a long time, to direct something I had prepared for someone who hadn't shown up, towards someone who always does. Ren's post kept collecting attention through the week. Someone who worked in local media shared it, not as a story, but just as a personal post they found touching. A man in his 80s from the Waimea area commented that the image reminded him of something his late wife would have loved. An older woman in Wellington wrote that she'd cried reading it. People are hungry for proof that kindness still happens without being engineered. By Wednesday, the post had been shared just over 400 times. I know because Ren kept sending me screenshots, slightly baffled, clearly pleased, always accompanied by some version of I don't understand the internet but this is lovely. On Wednesday evening, Philippa arrived at my door unannounced. I was in the kitchen making mince on toast, a bachelor meal, the kind Marjorie would have raised an eyebrow at, but it's quick and honest and I've earned the right to eat mince on toast at 65 if I choose to. I heard the knock and went to the door, and there she was, in her work clothes, a blazer and trousers, holding a container that turned out to be the pavlova she'd promised on Friday. Her eyes were red, the way eyes get when someone has been crying in the car on the way over. I brought the pav, she said. Come in, I said. We sat at the kitchen table. The pavlova went in the fridge. I made tea. We sat with our cups for a while, in the way that our family has always done difficult things, with something warm to hold on to, some small ordinary ritual to lean against. She said, I'm sorry about Friday. I said, I know. She said, I didn't think, I knew it was your birthday, she stopped. I didn't think you'd actually go alone. I didn't go alone, I said. I went with Clive. She looked at the table. You planned it for months. I booked it 6 weeks ago, I said. The table by the window. You mentioned once that you liked the view of the harbor from there. She pressed her lips together. The flowers, I said. I'd arranged ranunculus. Your favorite. She looked up. Dad, I'm not saying this to make you feel worse, I said. I'm saying it because I think I've made a habit of not saying things, and the habit has become a problem. We were quiet for a moment. Outside, the pohutukawa in the front garden was doing what it does in summer, blazing red, the kind of red that looks like it's been turned up past what's reasonable. I saw the pendant, she said eventually. Yes. You bought it for me, didn't you? It wasn't a question. She knew. I bought it for the dinner, I said. Not as a birthday gift. Just as a gesture. Because I wanted to. And then I canceled. And then you canceled. She was quiet again. Then, Ren deserves nice things. She does, I said. She shows up, Pip. Not because I ask her to. Not because there's anything in it for her. She just shows up. Philippa didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, I've been taking you for granted. It was such a plain thing to say. Such an undefended thing. I wasn't expecting it. I'd been braced for some version of justification, the way children sometimes justify things to parents even when they're grown and should know better. But she just said it, simply, without decoration. Yes, I said. A bit. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Her hands look like Marjorie's. I've always noticed that and I've never told her. I'm going to be better, she said. I know you will, I said. And I meant it. We ate the pavlova. It was good, she'd done it properly, with proper whipped cream and fresh strawberries from the Wakefield market, not the watery supermarket kind. We talked until almost 10 o'clock. She told me things about her marriage she hadn't said before, small pressures and quiet frustrations, the way Marcus's work had been consuming him and how she'd been compensating in ways that left her with less of herself for other people. Not an excuse. Just context. The kind of context that makes a person more understandable without making the thing they did more acceptable. I told her about the dinner with Clive. About the Chardonnay and the snapper and the lemon tart with the candle. I told her it had been a good night, genuinely, and I watched her face do something complicated with that information. I'm glad you had Clive, she said. Everyone should have a Clive, I said. She laughed, actually laughed, the real one, the one that sounds like Marjorie's, and for a moment the kitchen was warmer than the summer evening outside. A week later, Philippa and Marcus came to dinner. A proper dinner, the kind I make when it matters, a lamb rack from the Brightwater butcher, roasted with rosemary from the garden, camara with butter and a little cider, a green salad with the tomatoes that were still coming off the vines. Ren came too. Philippa had asked if she could invite her, which I found quietly significant. Ren wore the pearl pendant. Nobody mentioned it directly. But Philippa looked at it once, early in the evening, and then she looked at me, and she gave a small nod, the kind that means something was understood, not just acknowledged. The four of us ate until the light went out of the sky over the hills. Marcus brought a bottle of Spy Valley Pinot Noir from Marlborough, which was a good choice, a very good choice. He toasted my birthday, belatedly, he said, and apologized for not saying so sooner. I told him not to worry about it. Callum rang from Melbourne partway through dessert and we put him on speaker on the table, and he talked to all of us for 20 minutes, his voice a little tinny through the phone but warm, the way voices become when they're crossing distance to reach you. After dinner, when Marcus was helping me clear the plates and Philippa and Ren had gone out to sit on the back steps in the summer dark, Marcus said quietly, "She's been different this week." In a good way. I don't know exactly what happened, but, thanks. I didn't do anything, I said. He gave me the look of a man who has been married long enough to know that something is usually going on under the surface of things. Right, he said. He kept stacking plates. The pendant is still with Ren. That's where it belongs. I've thought about it since, in the way you think about a decision that could have gone several ways but went the right one. There are people in your life who carry you quietly, who don't announce it, who don't keep score, who simply find their way to your door when you need them without waiting to be summoned. Ren is one of those people for me. She deserved an $850 Marlborough pearl. She deserved more than that, probably. Philippa and I have had dinner 3 times since. We didn't miss the 20th of March. She rang at 8 in the morning, before I was even properly awake, and she said, "I'm thinking about Mum today." Are you? I said I was. We talked for an hour. I'm 65 now. I don't know what number comes after that, in the sense that I don't know how many of them I'll see, none of us do, at any age, though it becomes a more present thought as the years accumulate. What I know is that I spent too long absorbing things quietly, too long making it easy for people to take me for granted by never once making it difficult. Not difficult, exactly. That's the wrong word. What I mean is, I spent too long making myself invisible. Treating my own needs as the least important item on every list. Ironing the good shirt and arranging the ranunculus and booking the table by the harbor window, and then, when it all fell apart, saying, "Of course, don't worry about it," as though none of it had mattered. It mattered. It all mattered. And the day I gave the pendant to Ren instead of canceling the jeweler and eating alone in front of the television, that was the day something shifted. Not dramatically. Not with any confrontation or ultimatum. Just a small, quiet decision to treat my own effort as something worth redirecting rather than simply swallowing. That's the thing about being the reliable one. The one who holds the structure up, the one who never makes a fuss, the one who irons the shirt and goes to the restaurant with his neighbor instead of collapsing into self-pity when the dinner falls through. You can spend so long being that person that you forget you're also a person who deserves to be shown up for. I'm still learning that. At 65. Still learning. But I had a lamb rack with my daughter last week, and she wore her mother's expression the whole evening, and Ren's pearl caught the last of the summer light, and Callum's voice came through a phone speaker from Melbourne warm and close, and Clive texted at 9 o'clock to ask how it had gone. I texted back, "Good. Really good." He said back, "Knew it. Night." That's enough. That's more than enough. There are a few things I've come to understand, not from books or from anything particularly wise, but from living long enough to watch the consequences of things play out. The people who count on you never stop needing to be shown that you count on them. Reliability is not the same as presence. You can be dependable and still be absent in the ways that matter most. When you've given something of yourself, time, effort, preparation, care, and it's been dismissed without thought, you are not obligated to simply absorb that dismissal. You can, quietly, without drama, redirect that energy toward the people who have earned it. This is not revenge. This is not pettiness. This is the simple dignity of not wasting good things on empty spaces. And this, the people who show up for you without being asked, without fanfare, without calculating what they'll get in return, those people deserve to be seen. Clearly, explicitly, in ways that leave no room for doubt. Don't wait for the right occasion. Don't save the pro for a dinner that might get cancelled. Give it to the person who showed up at your door in their running clothes on a Saturday morning, slightly out of breath, glad to see you. That's who deserved it. That's who always does.